Today I will present you the results of a project we have conducted at the European University Association, specifically on collaborative doctoral education. So when a doctoral candidate is pursuing his or her doctorate together in a university and also with a company supervisor. Just to give you a brief overview of what we'll talk about today. So first, I will tell you a bit about the projects we've had at EUA, the European University Association, on university business partnerships and on collaborative doctoral education in general. So we'll look at some of the main results and the main conclusions. And then towards the end, I will just briefly introduce you to a self-assessment tool we have developed on university business partnerships. But this we'll see more later on. So before we start, just to give you an idea of what EUA is and what it does. So we are a stakeholder organization. Our membership is composed of about 850 universities across Europe, also Russia and a few other countries, and 34 national rectors' conferences. And in terms of our activities, we developed several events and projects where we try to bring in our membership and sometimes other organizations too. And we try to gather input from universities on good practices, on what they're doing at the moment and on the challenges they're facing. And then we use this input to develop our reports, our policy positions, and also at policy dialogue, mostly at EU level with Brussels organizations, for example, like the Commission, but also with other stakeholder organizations. So just for you to have a brief idea about what we do. So in terms of projects related to university business collaboration, we've had two big projects focusing on collaborative doctoral education. So the first Doc Career projects, which finished in 2009, and the second project, which I will present today, which finished in 2012, but the final report has been recently published. And then we've also had a more global project on university business partnerships called the EUA, which served then as a basis to develop the UB tool, which I will tell you about more later. So now we'll focus on the main core of the presentation, so the results of the Doc Careers 2 project. So as I've told you, the official publication of the report was just in the beginning of the month, and the report is available on our website. So if you're curious and have an interest in it, you can just go to the website and download the report. So just to give you a brief overview about the participants in this project and about the methodological aspects. So we've had a number of universities, companies, and doctoral candidates from across Europe participating in a project. We've tried to get a balanced number of participants from Northern and Southern Europe, East and West. And on a methodological note, so this is a more qualitative study. So although we've collected some quantitative data, the main focus of the study is qualitative. So we've used a case study approach with in-depth questionnaires to universities, companies, and doctoral candidates. And we've also held several workshops during the project, bringing together all these stakeholders to discuss specific questions related to collaborative doctoral education. So just to give you also a bit of a flavor of the case studies or the industrial sectors, we've tried to get case studies from different industrial sectors, so from more technological sectors, life sciences, and social sciences and humanities. Although I have to say we had a bit more cases in the technological fields than, for example, in social sciences. But as much as possible, we've tried to have a balanced representation. This is just to give you, again, an overall idea that we have involved many different universities, so more specialized universities, more comprehensive universities from different European countries. And on the top, you have the locations where we held our workshops. And here you also have some idea about the companies and other types of organizations that were also involved in the project. For example, public authorities or associations. We've also gathered their input. So I will show you now some of the main results. We don't have time in the presentation to go into depth into everything, but just some of the main things that we've seen from these different stakeholder perspectives, so universities, companies, and doctoral candidates. So the first question is, why do universities, companies, and doctoral candidates, why do they want to engage in a collaborative doctoral scheme? So for universities, what we've seen is that they're actually very interested in improving the quality of the provision of doctoral education and also in making more visible the university itself, so increasing its reputation. And that was indicated as one of the main motivations to engage in this type of work. They were also interested in forging more collaborations, in strengthening the linkages with companies. So that was the second highest motivation in terms of importance we've had. And of course, there were other types of motivations, like increasing or broadening the funding sources, promoting more employment or better employment prospects for the doctoral candidates, among a variety of other different reasons. But the main ones are, again, to provide better quality doctoral education and increase the reputation or the visibility of the institution. Now, when we look at why do companies want to have a relationship with universities, specifically engage in a collaborative doctoral scheme, the most important motivation for them is actually to increase the competitiveness of the company. So they see that cooperating with universities and with doctoral candidates in particular has a positive impact on their competitiveness and on the growth of the company. In some companies, we've also seen that having collaborations with universities was actually a part of their strategy. So not in all cases, but in many cases, especially for bigger companies and those companies that have been collaborating longer with universities, this was the case. And then, of course, similarly to universities, broadening research funding sources was also important. Having the opportunity to solve industrial challenges that companies themselves cannot do it on their own. And that, for example, was an important motivation to approach the university or to have a doctoral candidate developing work at the company. And of course, for companies, having a wider pool of recruitment of specialized people was also important. Okay, now let's look at why do doctoral candidates want to do it. So here, it was also very clear that the major motivation for doctoral candidates was that they wanted to deal with a real-life research problem. So the applicability of the research was a very important driver for them. Of course, enhancing their employment prospects, particularly in the non-academic sector, was also important, and extending their contact network. So what about the benefits? So what do these different stakeholders get from this type of collaboration? Here what we've seen is that there was a very high degree of consensus among universities, companies, and doctoral candidates about the benefits. So a collaborative doctoral candidate has this ability to be bilingual because he or she needs to understand the needs, the expectations of these different sectors, and needs to be able to deal with them. And that was a major benefit recognized by all the stakeholders. Of course, as we've talked before, enhancing the employment prospects was also an important benefit. And the possibility of working in interdisciplinary areas, because many of the topics or the doctoral research topics that are dealt within this type of scheme, they require knowledge from different scientific areas. And another very important element, which we've also talked in other presentations today, is the development of transferable skills. So this was also a very important element that universities, companies, and doctoral candidates, they thought are better developed in the collaborative doctoral scheme. So for example, communication skills, teamwork, and this gives the doctoral candidate an edge in terms of employment opportunities in the non-academic sector. So we've looked at the motivations, we've looked at the benefits. What about now the challenges? So what are the main challenges? So for universities, the major challenge was actually attracting and retaining suitable candidates. So finding the right person, finding the right profile of doctoral candidate was a challenge, and also some more procedural or management related challenges. For example, the decision making processes, having them timely and aligned with the decision processes in the company was also an important challenge. And just to also to highlight that several universities, they struggled with making sure that companies valued and understood the importance of the scientific input they were providing the company. So it's not always easy for companies to recognize the value of the scientific knowledge and work that is being developed by the doctoral candidate. Okay, so for companies then, what are the main problems? As I've hinted before, so companies' priorities, they change very quickly. So for them, sometimes it's very hard to ensure the continuity. So it could be continuity in terms of funding, when they are funding doctoral candidates, but also continuity in terms of interest in that particular research topic or research area. Again, identifying suitable people. So we've seen also for universities, this was a problem in identifying a suitable candidate. For companies, sometimes it's hard to find a suitable person at the company who is able to act as a co-supervisor to the thesis. Because especially, for example, in SMEs, sometimes it's difficult to find a person with a PhD in the area or someone who understands what research entails and what research is about, scientific research. And also to draw your attention, so this is a classical challenge for companies, it's the provisions of intellectual property rights. This is always a problem or a challenge for companies. They're always very concerned about intellectual property rights, which sometimes are not aligned with the interest of the doctoral candidate and the university in terms of publishing. So there's a tension there, or there might be. But there are ways to overcome that. We'll come to that later. Let's go now to the challenges for doctoral candidates. So we've talked before about this ability to be bilingual, so to move, so the person can deal with these two very different contexts, the university and the company. And this was actually related to the major challenge identified by doctoral candidates. So satisfying simultaneously the needs, the expectations, and the activities that are demanded by the university and by the company can be extremely challenging in some contexts. And also dealing with different or conflicting dynamics and pressures and with different levels of interest from the partners. So these were the main challenges for doctoral candidates. This is actually, we'll look now more closely at employment for doctoral candidates, for collaborative doctoral candidates. This is actually a picture from our first report, from the first DocCareers project. But the results of the second project basically corroborate this, and Elodie also mentioned a part of this in her presentation. So what we've seen throughout our projects is that doctorate holders, they can hold either research positions or non-research positions in a wide variety of sectors, as we've seen today. But it's much more frequent that someone who works in a research position will later on move to a non-research position. But the other way around, as Elodie also said, it's very difficult. So someone who goes out of academia to work in industry for some years, then typically it's very difficult to come back to academia because the incentives of career progression are very different in companies and in universities. So this other path, we seldom see it. So we've asked companies, when they recruit a doctoral candidate or a doctorate holder, what are they looking for? So what do they want? And we've gave them a list of skills and competencies, and we've asked them to rank how important each of these skills or competencies was. And if you look at the first 3 or 4, so you'll see that So they're all evaluated as important or moderately important, but let's look at the core skills that are the first 4 or 5. So companies are looking for a high level of technical expertise, so they want experts in the field that they recruit for, but they're also interested in more soft skills. For example, being a team player. Also, it's actually on par with the technical expertise. They also want people who value social skills and social experiences. So it's not just about the technical proficiency. Companies are also looking at other types of soft skills or transferable skills, as we might call them too. So we've also asked companies about the profile. So when they recruit a doctorate holder, most of them at the time of recruitment, doctorate holders occupy the position of researcher, and then just a few of them occupy other types of positions. But what we see is that as they stay on in the company, so after 5 or 10 years of being in the company, this pattern changes. So we have much less doctorate holders working as researchers, and they're more or less evenly distributed across the other professional categories. So this prominence of being recruited as a researcher tends to fade out as years go by. So just to leave you with some of the main messages or the main conclusions. So what we've seen throughout actually all our projects in this area is that to build a successful university business partnership or a collaborative doctoral scheme, it's absolutely essential that the partners trust each other and that they have the time to build trustful relationships. So that's the single most important aspect. Planning the collaboration is also very important. For example, planning how IPR will be dealt with, planning having contracts, planning the expectations and the activities is also quite important. I will just highlight again that this type of doctorate improves the employment prospects of doctoral candidates and doctorate holders, both in the academic, but particularly in the non-academic sector. And finally, these 2 last points, just to give you a hint, also that we've seen in some cases that this type of collaboration or this type of connection between the university and the company was a very instrumental point for the regional development, so for the development of the region where the university and the company are embedded. And in order to foster more these type of collaboration between universities and companies, and specifically on doctoral education, sometimes we need more policies, so not just in terms of funding, but also, for example, policies in terms of career rewards. So we have to try to find a way for universities and for companies to incentivize researchers to engage more in this type of collaboration. So after all of this, I leave you here with a few quotes from universities, a company, and a doctoral candidate. So is it worthwhile to work with the university and the industry? And okay, this might be a biased opinion from all these organizations, but it seems that in general there is a very strong consensus on that it is worthwhile to work together, to develop this type of doctorate between a university and a company, because it brings about benefits for all the stakeholders. So for a university, for the company, and of course for doctoral candidates. So with this part, I wrap up the results of the Doc Careers 2 project. And now I will just briefly show you a tool that we have developed at EUA. So it's a self-assessment tool for university business partnerships. And it was developed in the framework of this so-called EUIMA project, which also counted with a very high participation of universities and companies and other types of organizations. So the UB tool, you have the web address at the bottom. This is a freely available tool. It's online, and it's addressed to universities, to companies, and to other organizations who are engaged in university business partnerships. The tool, or the innovative part about this tool, is that traditionally university business collaboration is evaluated, for example, in terms of number of patents or number of publications. And we've also included these indicators in the tool, but the tool has a very strong focus on the process of the collaboration and on the quality of the collaboration, because these more hard indicators cannot fully capture the experience of university business partnership. So with this tool, we tried to enlarge a bit the scope of the assessment. The tool allows you, for example, to monitor the evolution of the partnership, because you can evaluate the partnership in 2 points in time. And you also get, for example, an automatic results report after you fill in the tool. Just to give you a brief idea about what the tool is and how it's organized. So we have 47 indicators distributed across 4 areas. So we have strategic approaches about motivations, structural factors, facilitating aspects, and goals, outcomes, and benefits of the partnership. So there are many indicators, but we don't expect that all of them are relevant for all types of partnerships. So the idea is that you can take a look at the tool, you check which indicators are relevant for the partnership you are assessing, and then you use those for your self-assessment. It's also important to say that the data you include in the tool will not be shared with any third parties and will not be made public. That's always a concern we have, so it's important to say that. So I invite you to go to the UBTool website, which you have here at the bottom, and to try out the tool and let us know what you think. We are planning to improve the tool in the future, and your feedback is very welcome. So with this, I finish my presentation. Thank you for your attention.